Stop. The voice cracked like a whip across the boardroom. She didn't even blink. Her pen hovered for a second, then slid across the paper in one decisive stroke. Across the table, her friend, the one who'd shadowed her for years, smiling when others mocked her, whispering warnings she never asked for, went pale. She stepped back, as if the signature itself had struck her. No one else spoke. The contract was done. Irrevocable. What came next would twist every expectation, every assumption. But to understand the weight of that moment, you'd have to go back. Back to a girl with threadbare boots, shuffling down a muddy lane at 5 a.m., clutching a dented milk pail. Back to the jeers that came from the boys by the grain elevator. Hey, cowgirl, how's your millionaire future? Back to a kitchen where bills piled higher than bread, where her mother's eyes stayed red from nights spent counting coins. She'd learned early that pity was poison. So she worked, in fields, in barns, in other people's kitchens. She scrubbed floors before school, stacked hay after. She wore her calluses like armor. And every laugh behind her back was stored, catalogued, filed away. By 19, she'd bought her first half-acre of neglected soil. Everyone said it was worthless. She said nothing. She planted anyway. Rain ruined the first crop. Pests took the second. She didn't quit. The so-called friend had been there from the start, offering advice that always seemed to stall her. Telling her which suppliers were trustworthy, which usually meant overpriced or unreliable. Steering her toward bad deals, then pretending shock when they collapsed. She learned to stop asking, to stop sharing. Quietly, she expanded, a few goats, then chickens, then rows of soybeans. She learned contracts, freight schedules, feed ratios. She learned which markets paid on time and which didn't. Years passed in sweat and risk. Then came the meeting request, the one from a buyer whose name carried weight across half the country. It was the kind of deal that could change everything, if she dared sign. Which is how she ended up in that room, pen in hand, while the friend's voice cracked the air, "Don't sign. You'll regret it." She signed. Outside, the wind hit her like a wall, sharp with the scent of rain. The friend trailed behind, silent now, but her eyes were hard. Somewhere in that gaze was a plan that had been forming for years, one that signing this contract had just shattered. And yet, if the friend thought the signature was the end of her schemes, she was wrong. It was only the first move in a game neither of them could fully see. The first week after the signing felt like the eye of a storm, calm on the surface, but she could sense the wind building somewhere beyond the horizon. Trucks began arriving earlier than planned, hauling away test shipments of her produce. Payments landed in her account like clockwork, each one more than she used to make in a month. She didn't tell anyone the figures. She didn't need to. In the village, whispers started. The same men who once laughed at her patched overalls now asked if she needed extra hands. The women who used to smirk at her second-hand boots stopped her in the store to catch up. She kept her replies short. Every kindness felt like a hook with a line attached. The friend, no, not a friend anymore, not really, kept her distance. But every so often, she'd appear, leaning in a doorway at the feed store, waiting by her truck after a market run, calling with questions disguised as small talk. "How's the new buyer treating you? Big orders like that can break a farm, you know." The words dripped with false concern. She ignored most of it. She had bigger things to manage. The buyer's quality checks were brutal. Shipments were weighed, graded, and rejected without hesitation if they missed the mark. She worked her crew harder, worked herself hardest of all. At night, she would lie in bed, body aching, brain running through lists, fertilizer schedules, harvest timelines, freight routes. Then came the first sabotage. A load of soybeans, meticulously sorted, arrived spoiled. Not from weather. Not from pests. From something added, a contaminant she couldn't trace. The buyer called, voice cool but sharp, "If it happens again, the contract's done." She didn't sleep that night. By morning, she was at the storage barn, checking locks, reviewing security footage. A figure, blurry in the dark, moving between pallets. Too tall to be one of her regular workers. The footage cut out before she could see the face. She tightened her circle. Only 2 people handled the high-grade shipments now, and she was one of them. Deliveries went straight from field to truck under her eye. For weeks, everything ran smooth. Profits climbed. She started mapping expansion, more acreage, a second greenhouse. And then, one afternoon, she came home to find her front gate hanging open. In the yard, tire tracks carved deep into the mud. Her goats were gone. The police took a report. The neighbors shook their heads. Probably kids. Or coyotes. She didn't believe it. In her gut, she knew, this wasn't random. That night, a message slid under her door, "You should have listened." No signature. No explanation. Just those words, scrawled in hurried block letters. She sat at her kitchen table, the note flat under her palm. Somewhere out there, the person who'd been smiling at her for years was tightening the net. And if she didn't find a way to turn this, she knew the contract wouldn't save her. It would bury her. 3 days later, she got a call from the buyer. Not about the goats. Not about sabotage. Something stranger. "We've had an anonymous complaint," the voice said. "Alleging you're not the one running your own farm." Her jaw tightened. "Who sent it?" "Anonymous," the voice repeated. "If there's truth to it, the contract will be re-evaluated." The line went dead. By the time she reached town, the whispers had changed shape. Now they weren't about her money. They were about her legitimacy. She walked into the feed store and felt eyes on her back. Someone snickered. Another muttered, bought her way in. The friend appeared again, perfectly timed, like always. Leaning against the shelves, pretending to browse. "Tough call you got there," she said, almost singing the words. "Must be awful when people think you didn't earn it." She didn't answer. She just paid and left. But the heat in her chest burned all the way home. 2 days later, a stranger arrived at the farm. He had a clipboard, a company badge, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Compliance check," he said. "We'll need to see your full operation, end to end." She walked him through every acre. Showed him the planting records, the machinery, the storage. He nodded, wrote notes, took pictures. But then he lingered in the barn, running his hand over the feed bins. "Strange smell," he said. That night, she found the source, a sealed bag of spoiled grain mixed into her feed supply. Enough to sicken an entire herd if it had been used. She stared at it under the dim light, cold settling in her gut. Before she could move it, headlights cut across the yard. A truck idled by the gate. She grabbed her flashlight, but by the time she got there, it was gone. No plate number. Just mud sprayed over her fence. The next morning, the buyer called again. "One more incident," he said, "and we'll be forced to terminate." Her mind raced. Someone wasn't just trying to ruin her business. They wanted her erased. That evening, she checked her email. Buried between invoices was a single message from an untraceable address. "It ends where it started." She didn't know if it was a threat, a warning, or a game. But the timing was too sharp to be random. And if she was right about where it had started, then the only way forward was back into the one place she'd sworn she'd never set foot in again. She waited until full dark before driving out. No lights, no radio. Just the hum of the engine and the pounding in her chest. The road to where it started was little more than a scar of gravel through the woods. She hadn't been here in years, not since the night she'd walked away for good, swearing she'd never come back. The old dairy co-op looked dead from the outside. Roof sagging, windows boarded. But when she pushed the door, it opened. No creak. No resistance. Inside, dust swirled in the beam of her flashlight, and fresh tire tracks cut across the floor. She followed them, weaving between rusted milk tanks, past piles of splintered crates. The tracks ended at a small office in the back. The door was half open. She pushed it. On the desk, a stack of photocopied documents. Her signature. Her farm's name. The contract. Every page stamped in red, void. Her stomach dropped. None of these were real. But they looked real enough for someone to wave under the buyer's nose. She reached for them, and froze. From the shadows, a voice. Thought you'd be smarter than this. The flashlight swung. The friend stepped into the beam, hands empty, smile thin. You made this too easy, she said. You think that contract saved you? It just made you worth the trouble. Before she could answer, the sound of an engine rolled through the empty hall. Another vehicle. More footsteps. Male voices, low and hurried. She backed toward the wall, calculating distance, exits. But the friend didn't move. You always were predictable, she said. And now you're right where we want you. Something in her tone wasn't just personal. This was bigger, organized. The door burst open. Two men stepped in, one carrying a metal case, the other pulling gloves over his hands. The friend nodded toward her. She's all yours. Her pulse kicked hard. She counted, 3 of them, one of her. The nearest exit blocked. But she'd gotten out of tighter corners before. And if they thought they'd cornered her here to end it, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. She didn't wait for them to close the distance. The flashlight snapped off, plunging the room into black. A chair clattered to the floor, shouts ricocheted off the concrete walls. She dropped low, slipped past the first man's legs, and bolted for the hall. Boots thundered after her. The beam of another light swept the corridor, chasing her shadow. She cut left, into the old loading bay, only to find the rusted doors chained shut from the outside. Metal scraped behind her. She turned. One of them blocked the doorway, silhouetted, the glint of something in his hand. Not a gun. A crowbar. You can run, he said, stepping forward, but you can't. The rest of his sentence vanished under the crack of splintering wood. She'd grabbed a broken pallet, swung it hard into his knees. He went down, cursing. She didn't wait. Up the stairs, 2 at a time, into the catwalks above the processing floor. Below, the friend's voice rose over the chaos. Don't let her get outside. We're not done yet. Her mind ran as fast as her feet. Why here? Why now? The fake documents, the metal case, what was in it? Whatever their plan, it wasn't just about destroying her. They needed her alive, at least for now. She ducked into an office at the far end of the catwalk. The door had a lock. Weak, but it would buy seconds. She scanned the room, filing cabinets, a busted phone, a cracked window with a drop to the overgrown lot outside. Below, footsteps pounded. Someone tried the door. Then came the steady, deliberate sound of the crowbar working the lock. She shoved the window open. Cold air rushed in. 10 feet down to the weeds. Not impossible. But she'd have to leave the papers behind, the proof of their setup. A voice in her head whispered, "Get out alive. The rest can wait." But another voice, colder, answered, "This is your shot. You walk away now, you may never get another." The lock snapped. The door swung. And as they stepped in, she made her choice. She didn't jump. Not yet. Instead, she grabbed the nearest drawer from the broken filing cabinet, yanked it free, and hurled it at the man with the crowbar. It caught him square in the chest, knocking him back into the hallway. The other lunged, but she was already moving, ducking past him and ripping the stack of forged contracts from the desk. The friend's voice carried from below, sharp, urgent. "Don't let her leave with those." The way she said it, not "don't let her leave," told her everything. These papers were the core. Proof that could kill her deal or kill whoever had engineered them. She barreled down the metal stairs, the echo masking her own footsteps from the ones closing in behind. The men shouted to each other, splitting up, their boots hammering different paths through the building. She clutched the papers tighter, her heart a drum in her throat. She burst through a side door into the loading bay. Moonlight cut across the cracked concrete. The chain on the big doors was still locked, but the smaller personnel door stood ajar, swinging gently in the wind. That should have been relief. Instead, dread slid cold through her ribs. Someone had left it open. On purpose. She stepped outside into the overgrown yard. The air smelled of diesel and something metallic, sharp. Her truck was gone. In its place, a different vehicle idled, dark windows, engine rumbling low. The driver's door opened. And out stepped someone she hadn't seen in over a decade. Her father. Except it wasn't the man she remembered. This one had harder eyes, a jaw set like stone, and a stance that said he'd long stopped caring who got hurt in the process of whatever he was doing. "You've been busy," he said, voice rough. "And careless. You have something that doesn't belong to you." She stared, the weight of years crashing down all at once, the nights he didn't come home, the debts he left behind, the farm she'd had to fight for with no help. "You," she whispered. Behind her, footsteps pounded closer. The friend's voice, breathless now, "Don't give it to him." Two sides. Both dangerous. Both wanting the same thing. And she stood in the middle, holding the one set of papers that could burn them both to the ground. "Time's up," her father said, holding out his hand. For the first time in years, she didn't know which direction to run, or if running was even an option anymore. The men from the building spilled into the yard, fanning out to flank her. The friend was among them now, hair loose, eyes locked on the papers in her grip. Her father didn't look at them, didn't even flinch, as if he knew they wouldn't dare make the first move while he stood there. "Give them to me," he said again, his voice not rising but slicing through the air. The friend stepped forward. "Don't listen to him. He'll ruin you. Those papers prove what he's been doing. Hand them over, and I can make this go away." The laughter that came from her father was dry, almost amused. "She's lying. Just like she's been lying since the day you met her. You think she was ever your friend?" He turned his gaze back to her, and for a second she saw something, not softness, but familiarity. A weapon he'd used before. Her pulse hammered in her ears. The night smelled of diesel and cut grass, and every sound, the creak of boots on gravel, the hum of the idling engine, felt amplified. "You have no idea what's in your hands," the friend said, stepping closer. "You think it's just a fake contract? It's much bigger than that. That paper could topple people you've never even met. Or," her father added, "it could make you untouchable." Two different promises. Two different traps. She'd been here before in smaller ways, being told who to trust, who to avoid, and every time, the advice had been poison. She backed up until her shoulder hit the cold metal siding of the building. No way left. No way right. Just forward, into one of their arms, or straight through the line between them. The friend's eyes darted toward the dark field beyond the yard, just for a flicker. A signal? A warning? She couldn't tell. Her father extended his hand again. The friend held hers out too. The circle tightened. Then headlights flared in the distance. A second vehicle tore up the dirt track toward them, engine howling. Everyone turned. No one seemed to know whose it was. The driver didn't slow. And in that blinding moment, she realized she could use the chaos, if she had the nerve, to vanish with the one thing they both wanted, and maybe, just maybe, turn this whole war in her favor. The oncoming truck slammed to a halt so hard the back wheels lifted off the ground. Gravel sprayed into the air, peppering everyone in the yard. Doors flew open, two figures jumped out, faces hidden by bandanas, each holding something that glinted under the yard light. "Move," one of them barked. For a split second, no one did. Then her father took a slow step back, eyes narrowed, as if calculating whether this was a rescue, an ambush, or something worse. The friend stayed frozen, one hand still outstretched toward her, the other tightening into a fist. The masked pair didn't hesitate. One rushed toward her father, shoving him hard enough to stagger. The other went straight for her, grabbing her wrist. "If you want to live, come now." Her instinct screamed to pull away, but behind her, the men from the building were moving again, and in their eyes she saw the same calculation: if they couldn't get the papers intact, they'd make sure she never walked away with them. She let the masked figure drag her toward the truck. The papers were still clutched tight in her other hand. Voices shouted behind them, some ordering, some pleading, some threatening. She caught a last glimpse of her father, not chasing, not stopping, just watching. They dove into the truck's cab, the driver flooring it before the door was even shut. The engine roared, tires biting into dirt. Her body slammed against the seat as the truck fishtailed, then straightened on the main road. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to catch her breath. The driver didn't answer. The one beside her finally pulled down the bandana, revealing a face she hadn't seen since high school, one of the few people who had never laughed at her back then. His name surfaced in her mind like something half-forgotten. "You've got no idea what you're holding," he said, glancing at the papers. "That's not just about your farm. It's about every deal in this county, and who's been taking the cut." Her heart pounded harder. "And you?" "I'm the only one who's been trying to stop it. Until now." The driver finally spoke, voice low. "You've got enemies on both sides. Your father's one of them. Your friend is worse. And if you hand those papers to either, you're done." "Then who do I give them to?" Silence. Then the driver's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "That's the wrong question. The right question is, what do you want to do with them?" The road ahead stretched dark and empty, but in her mind it was already crowded, with faces from her past, with the weight of every humiliation, every loss. She realized, with sudden clarity, that what she wanted had nothing to do with safety. It had everything to do with ending this, on her terms. And if that meant becoming more dangerous than the people hunting her, so be it. The truck veered off the main road onto a narrow logging trail, branches clawing at the windows. The driver killed the headlights, relying on moonlight and memory. They bounced over ruts, the suspension groaning, until the trees opened into a clearing. A low building sat there, windowless, metal-sided, humming faintly. Generator noise. The driver stopped 20 yards short. "Inside safe," he said. "For now." She didn't move. Safe from who? The man from high school, Jason, she remembered now, answered instead. "From both sides. You're not the first they've tried to shut down, just the first who fought hard enough to make them nervous." The air in the cab was thick. "What's in these papers?" she asked, gripping them tighter. Jason's eyes flicked to the driver, then back to her. "Payment ledgers. Shell contracts. Fake land deeds. Your farm is just one piece. They've been funneling money through deals like yours for years, buying silence with scraps while they take the rest." Her stomach turned. "And my father?" The driver leaned on the steering wheel. "He's part of the core group. walked away from you so he could work with them. Now you're a threat to all of it. Her fingers dug into the paper's edge. Every instinct screamed to burn them, to walk away from this whole labyrinth. But a colder voice inside her whispered that burning them would waste the one chance she'd ever get to make everyone who'd crossed her pay. Jason opened his door. Come on. Before they find us. Inside, the building was just one big room, concrete floor, metal tables stacked with files, a wall covered in maps and names connected by red string. She recognized more than a few, the friend, her father, men from the buyer's office, even faces from the local council. Jason gestured at the wall. We've been building this for years. But your contract, it tied them together in ways we couldn't before. That's why they're panicking. The driver locked the door behind them. You've got 3 choices, he said. Sell the papers to one side for enough money to disappear. Give them to us, and we take everyone down in court. Or, you use them yourself. Use them how? She asked. That, Jason said, depends on how far you're willing to go. Her mind flashed to the jeers by the grain elevator, the whispers in the feed store, the night her goats were stolen. And most of all, to the look in her friend's eyes when she'd signed the contract, not fear, not anger, but calculation. She stepped closer to the wall of names. Her pulse slowed, steadying into something deliberate. What if I want them to suffer before they fall? The driver and Jason exchanged a glance. Neither tried to talk her out of it. Jason just asked, how public do you want it to be? She didn't answer. Not yet. Because the real plan forming in her head would make public feel like mercy. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat at the metal table, the papers spread before her, mapping moves like a chess player. Every name, every number was a lever, and she planned to pull each one in the order that would cause the most damage. At dawn, she gave Jason his first task, leak just enough of one forged contract to a small-town reporter known for chasing political gossip. Not the full story, just bait. Within hours, the gossip spread, twisting through local networks like wildfire. Fingers pointed in every direction but hers. Next came the councilman who'd once blocked her land permit. She sent him a single photocopied page from the ledgers, no note. He resigned the next morning, citing health issues. By the end of the week, half the people on that red string wall were too busy scrambling to protect themselves to coordinate an attack on her. That was when she made her most dangerous move. She called her father. I have something you want, she said. And you have something I want. Meet me at the old co-op alone. He agreed. He always liked to think he could control her. That night, the co-op lights burned for the first time in years. She stood in the center of the floor, the papers in a neat stack at her feet. When he arrived, his eyes went straight to them. You hand those over, he said, and you'll never have to work another day in your life. She stepped closer. I don't want your money. From the shadows, the friend emerged, exactly as planned. And I don't want your lies, she said to him. Then, to her, give them to me. We can end this. They were so focused on each other they didn't notice Jason in the rafters with the camera. Or the tiny recorder clipped under her collar. Every word, every threat, every admission spilled into the lens. When she finally bent to pick up the papers, she didn't hand them to either one. She lit a match. The flames climbed fast, curling the edges black. Gasoline fumes caught, whooshing into heat. Both of them shouted, lunging forward, and that was when the sirens wailed outside. Police flooded in. Not local, federal. Jason's recordings had gone live hours earlier. The trap had been set long before they walked through the door. As her father and the friend were cuffed, she walked past them without looking back. The ashes smoldered on the floor, but the digital copies, the videos, the entire wall of names, all safely in Jason's hands. Weeks later, when her shipments rolled out to the buyer without delay, the town finally understood she wasn't just a farmer who got lucky. She was the storm they never saw coming. And those who had laughed at her once now crossed the street to avoid her eyes, because they didn't know if their name had been on one of those strings, or if she was simply saving it for later.